Welcome to a story of resilience, courage, and the fight for equality, a movement that changed forever the lives of African Americans. This is the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. Warning: this presentation includes images and information that may be disturbing. It began in the early 1950s, a time when African Americans faced harsh discrimination and segregation simply because of the color of their skin. This was a battle against injustice, and its core were the infamous Jim Crow laws. The term Jim Crow originated from a character in minstrel shows. White actors would paint their face black and mock black people, portraying the cruel stereotypes. Over time, Jim Crow became the corresponding with the oppressive laws that enforced racial segregation, laws designed to keep black people separate and unequal. But change was coming. In the 1950s, African Americans began to challenge the system of oppression. Two names stand out across the world: Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. These figures were key in the fight for civil rights, but they weren't alone. Organizations like the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference were also pivotal. It was September 1st, 1955, when a quiet but determined seamstress named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. It wasn't just about the seat. It was about standing up to the daily injustices black people face under segregation. Arrested for her act of defiance, Parks became the spark that ignited the Montgomery bus boycott. Led by the charismatic and dedicated Martin Luther King Jr., the African American community in Montgomery responded. They organized the boycott of the city's bus system, a system that depended heavily on black passengers. For over a year, thousands of people walked, carpooled, or found other ways to get around, refusing to leave to use the buses. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in a peaceful, non-violent protest. He argued that challenging unjust laws should not involve violence. His stance was rooted in a deep sense of justice and hope for a better future. And it was this powerful message that resonated with thousands across the nation. After 381 days, the protest worked. In 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Broder v. Gale that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The buses were finally desegregated. It was one of the first major victories for the civil rights movement, a triumph that inspired more people to join the fight against racial injustice. Rosa Parks became a symbol of the movement, called the mother of the freedom movement. Her bravery, her refusal to give in, had set off a chain reaction that will ripple across the country and around the world. But the fight was far from over. Martin Luther King Jr. continued to lead the movement, and in 1963, he delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech at the march in Washington. With over 250,000 people in attendance, it was the largest nonviolent protest the US had ever seen. His words carried a message of hope for the future, where people would be judged not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. King's leadership was instrumental in passing key legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which made racial discrimination illegal, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which ensured African Americans should exercise their right to vote. These were monumental steps forward in the fight for equality. Tragically, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, but his legacy lived on. His dedication to peace, justice, and equality still resonates with the people today, and he is honored every year on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The Montgomery bus boycott was a success. It showed that nonviolent protest, collective action could bring about real change. It also paved the way for future efforts in civil rights movement. However, it wasn't without its struggles. Protesters faced threats, violence, and arrests. Martin Luther King Jr.'s home was bombed, and while bus segregation was defeated, many forms of racial segregation, such as in schools and housing, persisted. The Montgomery bus boycott brought significant positive changes, demonstrating the power of a violent resistance, and collective action. It united the black community, proving that peaceful protest could dismantle oppressive systems like the bus segregation. It also propelled Martin Luther King Jr. into the national spotlight, setting an example for future civil rights actions. However, the boycott wasn't without its challenges. It faced intense opposition, with protesters enduring threats, violence, and bombings. Though the boycott succeeded in desegregating buses, it addressed only one aspect of racial inequality. Broader issues like segregation in housing, education, and employment would require continued activism and legislation. In the end, the bus boycott became a turning point in American history. It marked the beginning of a movement that would go on to challenge and eventually dismantle the Jim Crow system. The courage of ordinary people like Rosa Parks and the leadership of figures like Martin Luther King Jr. inspired a nation and continued to inspire the world. Though the struggle for equality is ongoing, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s forever changed the fabric of American society. It reminds us that with courage, unity, and nonviolence, change is always possible. Thank you.